Okay, we're back at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center with my third guest, Sue Cienki, the president of the East Greenwich Town Council, where there is lots going on, and especially since yesterday, a very raucous meeting. And I wanted to have you in explain to us from your perspective what took place and what's going to happen moving forward. So tell us what happened last night.
Okay, well, we had a regularly scheduled town council meeting. And when we arrived, there were lots of union members from both the NEA and the Firefighters Union in attendance. And we began the meeting by the Pledge of Allegiance and then had a 15-minute public comment session. During the public comment, the union members started screaming and shouting me down. They disrupted the democratic process, which was unfortunate because we were unable to complete our agenda and we had to adjourn. I could not at that point have moved the meeting because it was not posted for an alternative location, which would have been in violation of the law.
So what happens now? I mean, are you continuing with the normal schedule? Will there be an opportunity for the numbers who showed up last night be able to attend again?
Yes, we'll move the location, and had any union member had called me prior to the meeting and said, we're bringing 80 to 100 people at your meeting, can you switch the location? We would have accommodated them. We've done that in the past. We've had large meetings where people have called me up and said we're bringing large numbers, and we accommodated them. Nobody called me.
So you had no advance notice of what was going to happen last night?
And in fact, having a conversation with the police chief, because one of the items on the agenda was to talk about salaries, overtime for all our employees, in particular our firefighters union, which we had been exceeding our overtime costs by over 221%. So we wanted to have a conversation, what is driving those costs? You know, what can we do to solve this problem? Because that's not a sustainable economic model. How do we continue to process along this place? The fire chief assured me that the union was not there to cause problems. It would be no problem, we could hold the meeting. So I think we were all blindsided by the numbers that showed up. And it was, again, unfortunate. It was disruptive. They talked and shouted over residents that needed their questions answered and the comments to be heard by the council members.
So do you think that there's pushback by the town at the level of overtime?
I think it's a conversation that we want to have. What is driving the costs? And we couldn't even get that conversation started. We are looking at our entire financial situation. I think everybody is well aware that Rhode Island has a huge pension problem. I know the governor started to address it. But in East Greenwich, we're approaching well over $100 million in unfunded liability for our current retirees. How are we going to continue going forward? It's a math problem. We will not be able to sustain this level, and this level of economic stability in town if we don't address it. So what are we going to do as a town? And we just couldn't have that conversation last night. And we want our input from our union members. What's driving the costs? Are we not staffed fully enough? Why are we having overtime? What is causing it? Is it scheduling? Is it lack of staffing? So you can't have those conversations when people are screaming at you.
And there's been a lot of shakeups in East Greenwich, interim town manager, some different hirings. How much influx is the town right now?
I think that this change is always difficult for people, but I think change can be good. How you move forward. We are a stable town. We are well better off than most other towns and cities from a financial standpoint, and we had to look under the hood. We had to look under the hood and see what was under there. And it was a little bit shocking to see how we spend money and how we use our financial resources in town. As you're well aware, or maybe you're not well aware, our average tax bill is over $10,000. That means a lot of our residents are paying well over $1,000 a month in taxes. That's just not a sustainable model. And when you look at our pension costs, just for firefighters alone, we're increasing about 48% of their salary has to go above and beyond what their base salary is just to cover the pension costs of our retired firefighters. That's not sustainable. So we'd like to have that conversation with the union. How do we make sure that our promises to pay you a pension get paid while we don't run people out of town because taxes are too high?
And so again, after last night, after having to adjourn just because of what had transpired, again, as you said, you want to have next meeting in a larger location. What's your hopes that, again, a conversation can actually transpire that folks aren't shouted down?
Yeah, we actually started the meeting. I actually started the meeting and asked for civil discourse. We want our residents to be heard. We want to hear what our employees and our union members think. what's driving the costs, and that did not happen. So we'll have it at a larger location, but we'll have a police detail there. We will have the fire marshal there counting people in, and when we hit capacity, we will hit capacity. We will ask people that are unruly to be removed, because that doesn't help us engage in conversation. It was just an unfortunate circumstance last night.
Have you seen things get this heated in East Greenwich before?
I have never seen things get this heated. We've had previous meetings where there have been contentious issues and everybody behaved in a very civil manner. Once again, we've had people that said, I'm bringing a large group, and we've accommodated them. And I'm more than willing to listen to people. I think if anybody knows me, I'm more than willing to sit down with our residents and engage in conversation with them. That just did not happen. It was a union tactic to disrupt and not allow the residents to engage in any kind of conversation, which was unfortunate.
So in your estimation, is this part and parcel just as much politics, if more than policy?
It's a lot of politics, which is unfortunate. We've never seen this level of incivility and uncivility in East Greenwich before.
And you know, you have the interim town manager, you have Gail Horgan overseeing it for the time being, but there is a search going on currently, is there not?
Well, we couldn't even begin that dialogue, and that was also on our agenda, like the process for going forward to have a search for a full-time town manager. So again, all our progress was impeded last night by shouting down from union members.
Now, again, you're the town council, but you know, school issues, what we're seeing with the State House right now with the budgetary issues and the lack of budget, how much is that playing into issues with East Greenwich right now?
Well, in East Greenwich, we don't get a lot of state aid. We, as a town, contribute about $45 million in state income tax to the state. We get less than $5 million of that back, which is shocking. It's 0.5% in state aid that comes back to East Greenwich. I think most residents of East Greenwich are more than happy to give financial resources to towns that have poverty issues and students that need to be educated. We're more than willing, but we're not getting much back at all. And as a state, the state only funds education about 28%, which is well below the national average of 40%. So the state isn't even taking education seriously enough. I know that the governor has put a proposal in to pay for college education, but if you're not funding K through 12 at an adequate level and even coming up to the national mean, that's unfortunate too. I think a lot of our problems in East Greenwich, when we talk about financial issues with the schools, would go away if we were funded at a good level. I mean, we made steps in that direction with the state funding formula, but it's still not adequate enough.
Now, have I heard, are you taking part in a women's political training event coming up?
I am on July 22nd with the Women's Fund. They asked me to participate. I also am the state director for the National Foundation of Women Legislators, which is a bipartisan effort. We believe that women are ones that like to solve problems and engage in conversations and don't behave in the way that we saw last night.
So when is the next meeting going to take place? Like, what's the actual date?
So the actual date will be on Monday, July 24th, that we will have an open meeting, and we're hoping that we'll take steps to resolve any of the issues that occurred last night, and we can actually have a conversation with our residents.
And what do you have to say to folks who maybe raised the question that there was non-residents who ended up making it being a capacity crowd last night? Should non-residents be part of the conversation in something that's happening at the East Greenwich level?
Well, the non-residents were NEA union members that were shouting us down. I just wish that they would behave civilly. They're more than welcome to come to our meetings if they have questions and comments. I certainly like our residents to be the first ones to be heard when we have public comment, but I have always opened our meeting to everybody. As long as you behave in an appropriate fashion, you're more than welcome to come to our meetings.
So I don't want you to scoot away too much. I'm going to pull you over here a little bit closer here. So we're looking at July 24th
Yes.
for the next meeting. So it's clear that there's going to be continuing and protracted issues. Do you see the ability to work with the unions and find common ground to achieve what it is that you say is needed in East Greenwich?
Absolutely. You know, I'm more than willing to meet and discuss, and I've said this to the firefighters union. I've had conversations with the union president that the way we do business is we sit down and talk. So I'm hoping to continue to do that forward. I think the residents need to know how we're spending their money, and then they can chime in also whether or not we're spending their money in the most efficient and effective manner.
And you're here in studio. I appreciate you coming all the way up to Providence. So clearly a lot of eyes on East Greenwich. But what else should folks know that's going on in town right now?
We have a wonderful, vibrant town. We've partaked in the Lean Initiative, which allows businesses to come in and get licensed, and in a quick manner. The state has helped us with that. We have a vibrant waterfront and wonderful small businesses. We have vibrant businesses in town and restaurants. So come on down to East Greenwich. We're open for business. We welcome everybody to come down. It's a fabulous, fabulous community. And what people witnessed last night was not typical. It was outside agitators, and that's really unfortunate.
And you were recently on the host committee for Bob Flanders?
Yes, and actually it was a resident in town who was a member of the East Greenwich Town Republican Committee, said, because I am the town council president and I'm a Republican, would I agree to put my name on the fundraiser? And I said, absolutely. I think Bob is an intelligent, more than capable gentleman, a lawyer. He was a former judge. I think he would be a great U.S. senator, so I said, absolutely.
So what was the conversation last night? What do you think we'll hear anything from Bob? What do you think it'll take for him to make a decision to throw his hat in the ring?
I don't know. I absolutely don't know. So I hope he does. I think he'd be a great candidate, and that's how democracy works. You have several candidates that throw their names into the hat, and the public gets to decide who they think will best represent them.
So do you think there'll be a lot of statewide interest in the next meeting at East Greenwich, considering what took place this week?
Well, I think that we're the canary in the coal mine. I don't think that the problems that are facing East Greenwich are any different from any city in town. I think that financially we're very stable to a certain point, but the pension issue is huge. It's looming. It has to be addressed. How we fund education and the amount of education funding that we get from the state also has to be addressed. I would love to sit down with the governor and the lieutenant governor to discuss what the suburban districts are experiencing and the economic pressures that they're facing. So I welcome the opportunity to sit down with anybody at the state level to help us come up with solutions, because that's what we're looking for. We've identified problems, now we want to come up with solutions.
And what do you have to say? We had spoken with Bob Walsh in the last few weeks, and he made the point that with Gail Corrigan coming in with her experience with Central Falls, using that sort of Central Falls terminology, and I believe Bob said, well, East Greenwich isn't Central Falls, it's not that dire. So how do you respond to folks who say that there's maybe scare tactics going on?
Well, it's not scare tactics, and I think what got lost in the message is that no, we're not Central Falls, but policies and procedures that you have in place should not differ from town to town. And if your policies and procedures in place are not adequate to address your financial situation and your needs in town, that has to be addressed. So policies and procedures in place in 1987 that were not there in Central Falls are things that we're seeing in 2017 in East Greenwich. We have to address these issues going forward.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to come in here. I think all folks were kind of wondering what happened in East Greenwich last night. We're certainly going to keep the lines of communication open with everyone and keep an eye on it moving forward. So I appreciate your coming into the studio today. I know you're busy and you're off to another meeting, so Sue Cienki,
thank you so
so much for coming in. I'll let you
Pleasure to meet you.
taking off around the corner.